Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yamunatida Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 3, Text 34. Sorry, let me pull it up here. Okay. So, word for word. Itam Svabhartrigaditam. Thank you. Bhagavat Mahitvam Sangsmritya Vismita Diyaha Yamakinkaraha Te Na Eva. You're saying not from the transliteration, from the actual verse. Yeah. Okay. Naiva Chutashraya Janam Pratishankamana Drishtum Ja Bibhyati Tata Pravriti Sma Rajan Itam Svabhartir Garitam Bhagavan Mahitvam Sangsmritya Vismita Diyo Yamakinkaraste Naiva Chutashraya Janam Pratishankamana Drishtum cha bhivyati tata pavrittisma rajan Itam sabhartri gaditam bhagavan mahitvam Sangsmritya vismita diyo yamakinkaraste Naiva Chutashraya Janam Pratishankamana Drishtum cha bibhyati tata prabhrittisma rajan Itham svabhartir gaditam bhagavan mahitvam Sangsmritya vismita diyo yamakinkaraste Naiva Chutashraya Janam Pratishankamana Drishtum cha bibhyati tata prabhrittisma rajan Itam sabhartri gaditam bhagavan mahitvam Sangsmritya vismita diyo yamakinkaraste Naiva Chutashraya Janam Pratishankamana Drishtum cha bibhyati tata prabhrittisma rajan Itam sabhartri gaditam bhagavan mahitvam Samsmritya vismita diyo yamakinkaraste Naiva Chutashraya Janam Pratishankamana Drishtum cha bibhyati tata prabhrittisma rajan Etam sabhartir gaditam bhagavan mahitvam Samsmritya vismita diyo yamakinkaraste Naiva Chutashraya Janam Pratishankamana Drishtum cha bibhyati tata prabhrittisma rajan Itam sabhartri gaditam bhagavan mahitvam Samsmritya vismita diyo yamakinkaraste Naivatusha Shayajanam Kamana Drashtum Chabivyati Tata Pratifrarajam. Nitam Savartir Karitam Bhagavan Mahitvam Samsmritya Vismitadiyo Yamakinkaraste Naivatruta Shayajanam Pratishankamana Drishtum Chabivyati Tata Pratismarajam. Itam, of such power, Svavartrigaditam, explained by their master, Yamaraj, Bhagavat Mahitam, the extraordinary glory of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and His name, fame, form, and attributes. Sangsmritya, remembering, Vismita Diyaha, whose minds were struck with wonder, Yamakinkaraha, all the servants of Yamaraj, Te, they, Na, not, Eva, indeed, Achyuta Ashraya Janam, a person sheltered by the lotus feet of Achyuta, Lord Krishna, Pratishankamanaha, always fearing, Drishtum, to see, Cha, and Bibhyati, they are afraid, Tata Pravriti, beginning from then, Sma, indeed, Rajan, O King. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. After hearing from the mouth of their master about the extraordinary glories of the Lord and His name, fame, and attributes, the Yamadūtas were struck with wonder. Since then, as soon as they see a devotee, they fear him and dare not look at him again. Purport. Since this incident, the Yamadūtas have given up the dangerous behavior of approaching devotees. For the Yamadūtas, a devotee is dangerous. So I was told we can read the next verse also. Should I read the Sanskrit or just English? Okay. Itihasam imam guyam Bhagavan kumbhasambhavaha katayam asamalaya asino harim archayan. Translation. When the great sage Agastya, the son of Kumbha, was residing in the Malaya hills and worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I approached him and he explained to me this confidential history. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 6th canto, 3rd chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Yamaraj Instructs His Messengers. Om Agyanatamarandasya Ginajana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So translation repeated. After hearing from the mouth of their master about the extraordinary glories of the Lord and His name, fame, and attributes, the Yamadūtas were struck with wonder. Since then, as soon as they see a devotee, they fear him and dare not look at him again. Hare Krishna. So we're concluding the pastime of Ajamil now, which was started by Maharaj Parikshit's question about, after he had heard in the 5th canto about the hells and where living entities are going when they commit sinful acts. He was very much distressed for the sake of the living entities in this world. And he asked Shukadeva Goswami in the 1st chapter of this canto, 6th verse, how these human beings can be saved from entering hellish conditions, and which they will have to suffer so much terrible pains. And Prabhupada explains in the purport that this is the symptom of a pure devotee, is that they're paradukkha dukhi. Their only suffering is to see the suffering of others. And we can see that, especially in today's society in Kali Yuga, there's so many sinful activities being committed by every living entity, more or less, except for the devotees of the Lord. But if we just walk outside here especially, anywhere, but here especially, it's a touristy town, right? So there's a lot of bars, and especially when we were downtown, it was amazing to see so many bars, clubs. People were just running here and there, standing in long lines, standing outside in the rain to get in line. To be in line for going inside a club where they do all sorts of sinful activities. And then, like, we were just there, and on New Year's, late at night, we were just there and having nice free entertainment by chanting Hare Krishna, and it was just a big contrast, right? But even the people that were there to enjoy sinful life, they still took great pleasure in the Harinam chanting and dancing. We saw that. So they just need to change their activities to actually get the bliss of real life, which is devotional service, and give up their sinful life. But we just see that there's so much sinful activities being propagated in today's age. It's almost inescapable, especially if you grow up in America in today's age. There's so much sinful activity that's being propagated on the television, the social influence, even your parents, other people's parents, video games, etc. Just everywhere you are, there's some sort of sinful activity being you're tempted with being thrown at your face. So it's a very precarious situation in today's world. So it's not difficult to see that there's so much suffering because of all the sinful activity. So when one gets knowledge and realization of Krishna consciousness, then one can see through those eyes of knowledge and see that so many people are suffering because of their sinful activities, and it's just going to continue and continue and get worse and worse for them. And what to speak of this life, but what to speak of also next life. So when we hear about the hellish planets, see, just by one seemingly little sinful activity like illicit sex or eating meat, especially from the cow, you get such a seemingly severe reaction for that by having to suffer in a hellish planet. And we heard the particulars that are involved, what certain sinful activity brings about, which hell you go to. And so one could think, well, it's too much detail about that. One could have a doubt. How is it that there's so much detail about all these hells and what kind of sinful reaction you get? And also, I don't see it. I don't see this hell, or I don't remember being there. Or they could think that it's mythology. Of course, you can have this doubt. So many people become turned off towards hell because of Christianity's some of their preaching, and they might think that how could there be a hell if God is all loving? But from a Krishna conscious point of view, we understand that this is actually what is best for the living entity, is to have to undergo such reaction for their sinful activities, so that they learn to reform themselves and give up such material activity. And it might seem so innocent, but actually it's not, because the nature of sinful activities is that other living entities become exploited, and other people have to suffer the reactions of karma as well within all of that. So it might seem like, oh yeah, just doing this little sinful activity, eating meat or drinking beer or something, it's not so bad. And that's what it seems like in the material world, especially to all these living entities that are out there. They don't think twice. It's just habitual, or they can't understand why they're suffering even because of the certain sinful activity like intoxication or gambling, etc. But they just see that this is okay, this is fine. And then they might, like I was just in my hometown, and it's like really, it was really inconceivable to me that materialists thinks that these sinful activities are necessary just to have a good life. And it just didn't, I was just overwhelmed because I was thinking how unnecessary it is. Because it's so unnecessary to eat meat, and it's so unnecessary to intoxicate. Of course, when you're practicing Krishna consciousness and you have realization, it from like a very sober perspective, it's so unnecessary, because meat can be substituted with vegetarian food, and it tastes better, it makes you feel better. And of course, offering it to Krishna is the ideal thing. And then you can eat nicely, and you can, you don't have to suffer the reaction for it. So it was just like mind-boggling to me that these people are actually doing this. It didn't make any sense, because they have such a higher taste of Krishna prasadam. And then intoxication, these people might intoxicate so that they could kind of relax and be a little goofy and be a little giggly. But I was there, and more or less I was just as giggly, just as goofy, just as happy, and I don't have to have a hangover in the morning. So yeah, it was just, my realization was just that it's so unnecessary. But they might think like, well, if you're not doing those things, then there's this subtle thought like, well, so why aren't they doing it? Or, come on, just take a little sip, or do a little this, do a little that. But after we've heard about the hells and about the reaction that you'll get from these sinful activities, then if one is in the right state of mind, then one will not be interested, or one will philosophically understand this was not the best idea to do, so I will not do it. And ideally, this will displease Krishna, so I won't do it. So to be in such association consistently is definitely not favorable for devotional service, and that's what Srila Rupa Goswami instructs us in the Nectar of Instruction twice, to give up the association of worldly-minded people, and this will be most favorable for your pure devotional service. So yes, that's a little bit about the sufferings. So when a devotee sees this, especially a pure devotee, I might have some sentiment like, yeah, these people are going to hell, it's not good. But for a pure devotee, they're suffering, like really suffering, because of their developed compassion and love for Krishna. And they're suffering because it's so unnecessary that these souls are here, they're rotting in the material world, and all they have to do is just turn to Krishna, and they'll actually really be happy. So that's the theory, but the pure devotees are actually really experiencing it, living it, and that's why we heard about this Jamya pastime, is because Maharaj Pariksha was feeling great suffering for all the living entities in this material world that are simply running after this Maya Sukha, this illusory happiness. So for this verse, the theme here is about how after the Yamadūtas heard about the glories of the Lord from their master, Yamaraj, who is, as we know, is a Mahajana, great devotee of the Lord, they're struck with wonder, and now they're fearful to approach the devotees, or to even to look at the devotees as, to perform their duty. So what a great conclusion to this pastime, I was thinking. Because here you have the death, right? Like the agents of death. And there's that one nice verse in the Bhagavatam about how even death personified is fearful of the Supreme Lord. Krishna. So we could say equally as much as well as the devotees. So the agents of death are afraid to approach the devotees. And so I was thinking, what a wonderful conclusion, because if you look at the description of the Yamadūtas, they're so gruesome, like their form, what they do, everything about them is really intensely scary. And as you can see, like the most fearful thing, the most fearful agents in this world, or personalities, are afraid of a devotee, to approach them, to perform their duty, which is to punish the conditioned soul, the sinful living entities. So I was thinking that's like the best. It's like the best like protection from the scariest movie, you could say. So the devotees of the Lord are abhaya. They are fearless because they've taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. And in the translation of this, in the word for word, because they said that in the translation it says, as soon as they see a devotee, they fear him and do not look at him again. And I looked at the translation of that word, devotee, and achyuta ashraya janam, a person sheltered by the lotus feet of achyuta, Lord Krishna. I was thinking, what constitutes a devotee in this context, and this might have shed some light into it, is that one who is sheltered at the lotus feet of the Lord, abhayacharana. So we have to take full shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, and then we can become completely free from death. And Krishna promises this in the Bhagavad Gita when he says that this performance of devotional service will protect one, chayate mahataha bhayat, from the most dangerous type of fear, which is to glide down to the lower species of life, especially after attaining this human form of life, to suffer the consequences of sinful life and death. It may seem out of reach, but for us in this life, because living entities, as Maharaj Yudhisthira says, is the wonderful thing is that the most wonderful thing is that everybody's seen their forefathers die, and still they're living as if this is as if they'll live forever, right? Which means that they don't think about death, or they don't actually have that reality that I have to prepare for that exam, or that final exam, which is what my consciousness will be focused on at this time of death. And Krishna mentions that what happens is you go to that place, wherever your consciousness is fixated, you'll get a body that will be suitable to enjoy such desires based on how what you deserve karmically. So a devotee takes full shelter of the Lord, and for us, we follow the principles of Bhakti Yoga given by our Acharya Srila Prabhupada, and we serve our gurus chanting 16 rounds, following the four principles, we stay free from sinful life. We stay situated on the boat of transcendental devotional service, and then we can move cross beyond the ocean of material existence. There's that really cool painting of Srila Prabhupada. I don't remember where it was. I think it was in the CC. There's a really cool painting of Prabhupada's on a boat with a bunch of devotees, and he's just with his arms raised, and then below is the ocean, and there's sort of like a storm. Then you see these transparent, like, sinful activities, and then you see some devotees are like swimming to the boat and climbing up. It's a really cool portrayal of this. So yeah, we have to swim towards Srila Prabhupada's transcendental boat and cross over this ocean of material suffering. It might seem very simple, but because we're conditioned to enjoy the material world, it can be very difficult and be a great struggle. But Srila Prabhupada says that a real hero, so people want to be a hero, especially men, have this desire to be some great person, some hero in society, someone who's recognized. And they might think from a material point of view, okay, this means I got to get money, I got to be very expert in sex life, I have to keep up with the status quo, have a great, nice car, etc., etc. But the real hero, as explained by the great saints, is one who is struggling with the material modes of nature, struggling to get out of them and serve Krishna. So that is heroic. That's a heroic feat. So the most heroic feat in this material world is to master the mind and senses, because practically everybody here in the material world is godas, or servant of their senses, which is keeping them in the suffering of this samsara cycle of birth and death. So these were some thoughts. Okay, yeah, so wanted to just highlight a previous verse as we're concluding this pastime, was that the glories of the holy name was highlighted because the whole pastime of a Jamil is basically concluding with the greatness of the holy name, because that is what will free us from this material world. The suffering of the material world is to chant the holy name of the Lord in this age of Kali. And that's in the 31st verse, which Shukadeva Goswami mentions that this chanting of the Lord's name, it uproots even the reactions of the greatest sins. And I remember telling somebody recently, he was at a Sunday feast, I believe, a few weeks ago, and we were talking about sin, and I think the person was asking about how, so is the goal to release ourselves from sin? And I said, more or less, yeah, that is a byproduct of serving Krishna. And I said, well, the Shastra explains that just by chanting Krishna's name once, then you free yourself from so many sinful reactions, and then even you free yourself from even however much you could perform in the future. And the person was like, whoa, that's great. And I was like, yeah, we just did that. You just chanted Krishna's name like 100 times tonight or more. And so just imagine what's in store for your sinful reactions that you have coming. They're being wiped away. And we can feel that too. It's not just like some theoretical thing, but one who performs devotional service feels liberation. They feel free from the modes of nature. So that is very solidifying for this understanding that this what the Shastra explains and about the power of the holy name and freeing ourselves from fear, is that we actually can experience that with this prayaksha, this direct perception. So that's been, I would say, one of the most convincing factors of Krishna consciousness for me is, especially in the beginning, was really like realizing the knowledge and experiencing the real effect of the holy name, which is explained about in the Shastras, experiencing this love for Krishna and freedom from anxiety and so many things, and releasing yourself from so many unfavorable habits. And so that's been very powerful for me, and that's what people are looking for, because they see so much hypocrisy in the world, especially in religions, how there's a lot of theoretical knowledge and emphasis on rituals and salvation in the afterlife, but not so much about how this will transform you right now, how you'll actually be transformed. And I'm not saying all religions don't experience that, but I'm just saying in general there's this aversion to religion because of this concept, which I definitely had as well. But when I came to Krishna consciousness, like, wow, this is very tangible, it's very real. And so when I hear about things like, yeah, I don't remember being in hell, and it seems like doing a particular sinful activities, it still seems, somewhat innocent. I don't experience it, but by having so much, getting realizations of the scripture, of particular things, like let's say that Shukadeva Goswami here is talking about chanting the holy name as uprooting sinful reactions. And so you might get an instruction from a great sage here, right, about the power of the holy name, what it can do for you, how it could help you, and what it cleanses in your heart. And so if you are experiencing, if you're realizing an instruction from the Shastra, from one of these great souls, or the Shastra, of course, or Vyasadeva, or whoever, you're experiencing that. So then, how can you just discredit what Shukadeva Goswami is explaining about the hells, right? So you can. It's almost like somebody who's just looking for good quotes to get inspired by, but they give up, certain sections of what they don't want to hear, right? There are certain instructions they don't want to hear, and they might just like discredit it, but you can't, because it's coming from the same person, same author, same disciple succession. So you can't just discredit something that you don't like or don't want to hear. At least you have to consider that it's true, and then make that research. Anyway, we're actually running out of time, so thank you for listening. Are there any comments from the senior devotees or questions from others? I was wondering if it's possible if one of the senior devotees can elaborate a little bit more on in this verse, like what it means to be a devotee, like what Shukadeva Goswami's explaining here as being a devotee, and then the Yamadūtas are afraid of them approaching them.
People who don't think they're devotees.
Well, the Yamadūtas are devotees. They're devotees of Yamaraj, and they trust that he's, on the up and up, which he is. But they're not chanting Hare Krishna. They're dragging the sinful to hellish planets. So this tale should serve as a very great impetus for chanting the holy name. But it's interesting that I think that when one takes up the chanting, usually takes it up because of the way it's presented, of course that's in there, that relieves you of sinful reactions. But the attraction is more on the positive side. Oh, you can awaken your ability to experience the highest bliss. And the deliverance from hell will take care of itself. But this whole chapter is all about that as an important impetus also. Especially for people at large, I think.
And what about this the verse is talking about? It's talking about what about this in the verse it's talking about, it's mentioning how the Yamadūtas, they're afraid of devotees. So then the question that's being brought up is like, all right, well, what type of devotee do I have to be, or what type of devotee? What's the quality of that devotee whom the Yamadūtas are afraid of? Be pure devotees, or mixed devotees, or you chant Hare Krishna once type of devotee, or?
It says they fear him. But what they really fear is Yamaraj, in case if they go after him. So it's, yeah. I mean, the thing is, this history is all about the great power of the holy name, even chanted without, did he have Bhakti? I mean, basically he remembered that. It was basically his son's name. The power of chanting to eradicate and to save us from the worst punishments of going to hell. But but the thing is that when we chant around, we're saying, boy, I'm saved from hell, That's not really why you chant, is it? And we're not encouraged to do that. That's why, Lord Chaitanya even says, Nadanamdan Janmani Janmani. He will only take birth after birth as long as he has pure devotional service. But I think what's important about this kind of extended instruction like this is that it can impress the masses of people if they have a little faith in it to begin chanting. It's like that's so important that they may be chanting for this, like you may in the Bhagavad Gita it says there are 4 kinds of people who come to Krishna. They're not pure, but they're sukriti, and so that's an encouragement. Okay, if you want to come to the temple and pray for whatever, but just come to the temple, approach Krishna. So if you're afraid of going to hell, you commit so many sins. All right, let me take up the chanting. Hare Krishna, Krishna, be free. And if you get into that, then you can find out about the rest of the program. I mean, otherwise, you're going to chant one time and be saved.
Also, Prabhupada said that just by having neck beads on, the Yamadūtas, they don't disturb you. So that's another one. Of course, devotee means remembering Krishna, trying to serve Krishna. But as Devotee was saying, or as Balaram was saying, there's devotional service in different modes of nature, but still, they're devotees. So.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I have a question.
Do we have time for a question? Okay. Yes,
May
Prabhu?
I?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, thank you very much. You're very kind and Dovat pranams. Prabhu, I see in the translation to the text you chose for today, text 34, that the Yamadūtas, they were struck with wonder because after hearing from their master about the Lord. So based on this, my question is, and I think I have to say even more before I present my question. You know better than me that Shishupal and Kamsa, for example, they were not there being struck with wonder because of hearing about the Lord. It happened the exact opposite. They insulted him, Shishupal insulted him, and Lord Kamsa wanted to kill Krishna. So here we have two different reactions. Some people insult Krishna and try to kill him, and the Yamadūta and different from this, the Yamadūtas were struck with wonder. So how do you, my question is, how do you explain this difference? And to be more exact, the exact question is, if you have people insulting and trying to kill Krishna, and simultaneously you have people becoming struck with wonder because of hearing about him, the exact question is, how wonderful is Krishna?
So there's like two parts to that. Well, Dravida Prabhu just mentioned that the Yamadūtas are devotees, and they're agents of Yamaraj, so they're submissive to Yamaraj. So they're submissive to a Mahajana, or a devotee of the Lord. And so when they inquired about this incident that happened, they were trying to perform their duty, but they were stopped by the Vishnu-Dutas. Then they returned to their master and inquired from him about it. And then we heard the conversation, and they heard the glories of the Lord. And then because of their submission to their master, Yamaraj, then they got that mercy to be able to understand the glory, the actual glories of the Lord. So they were struck with wonder. Whereas Shishupal and Hangsa, they're completely envious of Krishna. So when they hear, and they're masters of their own senses, so when they hear about Krishna, their envy burns more and more and more. So then we see that they tried to kill Krishna in so many ways. So I didn't quite understand, like, how wonderful is Krishna because of...
Is it possible for a wonderful person to cause envy in others, in some people at least?
What was it?
If a person is wonderful, isn't that, if he is really wonderful, isn't that to be expected, that no one will be there envying him or trying to kill him? Everyone will be there worshiping him?
No, just like the 6 Goswamis.
Prophet said as soon as you become a devotee, there'll be so many envious people.
Yeah. The demons are demons because exactly because they envy God. That's the basic thing. And when they hear the glories of God, they get angry. It's like Hiranyakashipu. He became furious at his son. You know?
Because of this definition between the ruffians and the Jamalak and the 6 Goswamis, it doesn't mean the ruffians are demons, they're just kind of rough people.
Yeah.
Asuras don't like Krishna.
Yeah. But they can also be delivered, but they have to go through a lot of pain. They have to be chastised, killed by Krishna, or get the mercy of like Jagai and Madai. They can be delivered in that way. I was just hearing probably the lecture that in this age the Lord doesn't kill the demons, but as Lord Chaitanya, he kills the demonic mentality. And that happened with Jagai and Madai. And Asjamil, his example, he had become fallen and very sinful, but he was purified by the experience he went through, by hearing the whole thing and being saved. And then he was repentant, and he was really determined to. So every living entity, whether he's a demon devotee or in the body of a worm, is originally a devotee. And so there's a possibility to come to devotion, especially human life, if you get the right association. So no one is condemned, but the demons they become enraged when they hear in the glories of God, because they're competing with them.
So the demons want to become God themselves?
Yes.
Oh, that is the reason. Okay.
Do we have time for another question? Okay.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Or comment.
You were saying you were attracted because of the direct perception, and I was remembering when the devotees, we were coming back from the farm in Escondido, and I was asking each devotee what attracted you to Krishna consciousness, and each devotee gave me their answer. And I was telling them that what attracted me was the 4 regulative principles, because I was, breaking all of them. So I was seen as a challenge, you know. Let me try to give this up, you know, let me try to do this and that. So for me, the four regulative principles was very, very attractive, you know, in our philosophy.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
That reminds me, there's this one devotee who joined New York. Her name is Ragatmaka. And she had been a nun, you know, and her parents really put her into that, but she was dissatisfied with the explanation of God that she got in the church. So she kept reading, and she got a book. And unlike you, she hadn't been breaking them all, but she was she was attracted to the four regs because she said, "Oh, this is strict, just like my convent, but it's giving me all the answers I'm looking for." And so she was a great hero of the marathon. She was recognized by Prabhupada. She would type practically all night, you know, transcribe. This was the 17 books in 2 months marathon in July of 1975 in L.A. And she was there, and she was constantly typing. In fact, my office, I wasn't part of the marathon at first, was right behind, next to the building where she was typing, and she would keep me up, you know, with the typing. I couldn't hardly sleep all night, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. Amazing, surrendered soul. And there's an article in the BTG, How I Came to Krishna Consciousness. Fascinating. Soul.
Thank you for the nice class, Prabhu. I just had a question. Is an offense and a sin the same? And if not, which one's worse? Like an aparad, like to a devotee or so.
Can someone answer this?
The sin is usually performed. In other words, anyone can perform a sin. For a devotee to perform a gross sin, it's certainly an offense. It's an offense against the guru. It's an offense against the holy name, right? But not everyone who performs a sin, it doesn't offense because they're not devotees. There's plenty of people get sinful activities who aren't devotees, so you don't characterize as an offense. It's just a, you know, done out of ignorance, and it's going to produce a lot of suffering. But those who are trying to be devotees, they're trying to avoid offenses against the holy name, which includes sinful activity, breaking the four regulative principles. You know, to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so much about it. So, yeah, disobeying the order of the spiritual master. You know, those it's included in there. So for a devotee, the sin is certainly an offense. But for the vast majority of people, you wouldn't say it's an offense. You know, their whole life is beginning to end with an offense. So it doesn't make much sense. But the sinful activity is just described. You know, the result is in the hellish planets. But devotees are not going to go to the hellish planets, you know, from their offenses, because they've done some devotional service. But it'll impede their devotion, and they may have to take birth again, which is a lot of suffering. You know, so it's a different category.
Thank you. Nice question and answer.
But Bhakti Tirtha Swami, he wrote a number of books, but one book he was discussing different offenses, and specifically he was mentioning Vaishnava Aparad. He wrote a whole book on it. And anyways, he was analyzing this word aparad. So it's like aparadha, and he was saying without Radha, or without Radharani's mercy. So it's like you perform a offense, and then you're without that, you know, mercy of Radharani. And but it's interesting because you see there's a number of devotees I've known throughout the years who struggled with like sin, you know, like following principles or something like that. They've struggled. But because they had the right attitude, or at least a respectful attitude towards devotees, somehow or other they stuck around. and they've gotten purified over the years, and some of them have, transcended. Whereas there may have been very strict persons who were following the principles and, rising early and the four regular principles and everything, and because they didn't have the right attitude towards Vaishnavas, they were just, where are they? They're just gone. So it's interesting. Of course, better no sin, better no aparad, better none of this. But it's an interesting thing to note. Because like a lot of the times you say, oh, well, Vaishnava aparad, because there's a lot of preaching around the Hare Krishna movement. Be careful for Vaishnava aparad, be careful about Vaishnava aparad. It's going to take you away, right? And of course, Maya in general, sinful activities, but again, it's like Krishna especially can't tolerate that one, that Vaishnava aparad. So, anyways.
All right, thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.